Every time. Performance anxiety.
Apparently.
Even though it's literally just us.
I know.
And Romeo.
Oh, and Romeo. He makes
the
me
white
nervous.
Fluffy Doge. I know. He makes everybody nervous. He's very intimidating.
Judgmental.
Yeah, 15 pounds. He's like a little, like, just sassy boy, I feel.
Mm-hmm. He's got personality.
He really does. He's doing this thing now where he like shakes if he hears a sound he doesn't like. Like like his whole body, like full shaking, as if he's like scared.
Oh.
But which you feel really bad because he just looks so pathetic and sad. But at the same time, it's like if I pull the chair out too fast and it squeaks wrong, he's like shaking, and you're like, okay, you're being a little princess of the pea, but okay.
Yeah.
Very, very sensy boy over here. That's funny though. Okay. Welcome to Girls Gone Spooky, episode 14.
Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited for today.
Yes, we have a lot of content today, I feel, to get through. I have some like carryover from the last episode, some new stuff. Amy's got new stuff. I potentially have like a family story to share. Time
permitting.
Thank you. I was like, what is the word? It's not pending. Thank you.
Permitting.
We'll see. That may get pushed to next week. But should we just like dive right in?
I'm ready.
Okay. Amazing. So we're starting with I called it in my notes a Dear David conclusion, but that's actually just like absolutely not accurate. So big update. They're making a movie out of it.
Whoa.
So yeah. So they're making a movie out of it. And so I found an article on Bustle that actually goes into some of the just like what happened between where I left off and where like the movie situation is happening. So it's the producer of It, the remake, not the original, the remake with Bill Skarsgård, who's just like fabulous as Pennywise. So one of the things they say in the article is like, so how did Dear David end? Because people are trying to figure out like what is the movie plot going to be, and they were like, in short, it didn't. But before we get into that, like, here's some info. So he talks, they kind of do a quick little summary of like basically the whole thread that I shared last week. So like documenting the weird phone calls and like when his cats were panicking and the green chair was moving or rocking or just all these like creepy things. Bustle also, I guess, put together like the entire narrative along with theories in a separate article. So if people are maybe interested in that, I can like post that to our bio on Instagram for a little bit, or maybe just share in our Facebook group. But it's so creepy and it actually gets scarier. So,
oh no. How is that even possible?
So, I know. Well, there are photos and it's really scary. So I'm like having a hard time getting it out because I'm so freaked out. So he posted photos of dark corners that appeared to have the face of a kid with a dented head like floating in them. He also spotted a statue in Japan that looked like Dear David. Because remember, I think I said in one of the last tweets that he was going to Japan or he was going on a trip. Yeah. And so he was like, maybe he'll forget about me, whatever. His electricity would waver, his TV would turn on and off, he'd hear scratching and see like floating like ears and eyes through his door peephole, which I think that one I think can kind of be explained away, just like a trick of the light kind of situation. But it's still really creepy. Yeah. David would visit him in his like bodily form in his dreams. And then one night after Ellis dreamed of David, he woke up to find pitch black photos on his camera roll that he did not recall taking. It gets worse because he posts the photo and it looks pitch black until you turn your brightness way up. And then you can literally see a little boy sitting in that chair. Yep.
Just
Yep.
taking some selfies.
Yep. Literally. But it's almost as if he took the photos, like from a distance. It's very creepy. And you can see his creepy head, and it gets closer. He gets closer and
Ew.
closer.
No.
Yeah. So they continue with the summary. They say he tried to stave off David's spirit. And by the way, this guy's name is Adam Ellis, in case we forgot. To stave off his spirit with salt, other ghost fighting techniques. No matter how hard he tried, David stuck around. So he stayed through August, September, October, November, all the way into the beginning of 2018. In January, Dear David started appearing in Ellis's Instagram stories, prompting fans to worry that David was possessing him. So one night in January, he dreamed that David crashed down on him from the ceiling and woke up feeling out of breath. Eventually, he quit his job at BuzzFeed. And by February, the Dear David stories started to drop off. He gave an update in February, noting that things had quieted down quite a bit. This is the tweet. For everybody asking if I'm alive, I'm doing okay. It's been pretty quiet around here lately, and I've been trying to focus on work. Of course, I'll keep you updated if anything strange happens, but for now, I'm staying busy with drawing and other projects. So obviously, people were wanting more content, and people are like, okay, like, how is this possible that it just like stopped? But he claimed like, I have no new info to share. So this is someone was like, someone tweeted at him and said, hey, it's cool if you're done with the whole David saga, but if so, could you maybe make a statement to wrap it up? I loved when the notifications popped up. If it's in the past, I'd like to turn off my notifications when you tweet. So that comes from somebody that very clearly thinks that he's telling a story with this stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so Adam responds and says, I've said a few times that I'd update if anything happened. I'm not going to start inventing stuff just to keep a steady flow of updates. I promise I'll keep you informed, but if you're only here for David tweets, I don't know what to tell you. I've had this account for 8 years. So he's like, I'm just documenting my life. Like, this is just something that has happened. Mm-hmm. So as of June 2018, which is when this article was written, there was like no new Dear David content since February. Of course, it doesn't mean that he's not there. There are a lot of theories that potentially he like has possessed Adam. So on the other hand, a lot of people think it's a hoax, or at the very least, like a very compelling piece of fiction. And since it's getting made into a movie and the tweets kind of dropped off around the time that deal started coming to fruition, that's sort of what people have landed on. Suspicious. Yeah. But then again, more than one person has woken up in the middle of the night feeling a shadow hovering over their bed. And though the brain plays tricks on half-conscious mind, who's to say ghosts aren't real? So it's sort of just like this lingering question mark. I'm so curious to see what happens with the movie, because I think it's going to be really interesting. So I'm going to link in my notes the article that's about like all of the tweets, and this was updated November 19 of this year. So I'm actually just going to scroll to the bottom and make sure there's nothing else that we're like missing, because honestly, I hadn't seen this full article until just now.
Yeah, this is a long saga.
So long, I know. It just like goes on and on and on. So let's see. He did a couple of interviews, it looks like. Okay. So the last update was what I just said, like sometime in June 2018. He had a couple interviews actually around the time before and after that the deal for the movie was being made. And he said he like continues to say vehemently that what he experienced is absolutely real. Mm-hmm. Of course, not everybody believes him, and like he probably would say that since there's a movie coming out about it. But I don't know. It's very creepy. But the photos, I'll post the most clear, like the clearest one, and I'll increase the brightness on it to our Instagram when this goes live. But like, ooh, it's so creepy.
I want to see.
Yeah, it's very creepy.
Yikes.
Okay, so that is kind of wrapping up Dear David. So now we're moving on to my themed content for the week, which is urban legends, creepy, like dare kind of things, kind of in line with what we talked about last week. So I'm going to be talking about Candyman. And it's interesting actually because there's one historical story that I'm going to cover and talk about in more detail in a moment that is very clearly linked to the Candyman like challenge, which is similar to Bloody Mary, where you say it looking in a mirror. I'll explain the rules. But there's also someone who we mentioned in the past who has been called the Candyman. And I'm just going to quickly touch on that because it's not the same thing. I just want to make that clear. I could see why there's confusion. So I don't know if you remember the Halloween episode where I talked about the guy who poisoned his kids with pixie sticks. He has also been coined or, called, I guess, Candyman. So as a reminder, this was a true story that happened in Texas in the 70s. A man who had some amount of debt. It sounds like somewhere around $100,000. And of course, in the 70s, that was, quite a bit. He was in a really tough place and basically had no other choice but to do something insane, or so he claimed. He ended up putting cyanide into pixie sticks and gave them to his children on Halloween. So he ended up passing some more out to trick-or-treaters. His daughter did not die. However, his son and a few others did. So he was eventually charged with capital murder, put to death by lethal injection. But yeah, so he got the name Candyman. The idea, I think, was to take out an insurance policy on the kids and then, really, really
collect
sad
the
and
money.
dark. Yeah. But I just wanted to quickly touch on that because that's not the Candyman that we're talking about, but that is also the other Candyman because that's what he was called.
Okay.
So now on to the Candyman we are talking about.
Okay.
So bit of a trigger warning here, or content warning, I guess. There are a lot of this has to do with an enslaved person. So keep that in mind if that's, and it's a murdered enslaved person. So if that's going to be too upsetting, please skip past my part.
Yeah.
Jump to Amy's. So one of the things that this article kind of talked through was how, things are the Candyman, like as we know it in modern times, a lot of the awareness of it stems from the movies. There was a movie in, I think, the early 90s and then a remake just this year, which was fantastic, by the way. The original was a bit of a slasher, like kind of just old school traditional horror film. Yeah, gory and just like all about the violence. Like it was just it was a slasher. Like it was just like blood everywhere. Like that was the whole premise. Like that was the plot, basically. Right. It's still based on this same historical story, but the new one, and I think I mentioned this last week, Jordan Peele was involved. I can't remember if he directed or produced or both. But there's definitely like a major social commentary spin on it. There's a lot of like police and Black people and, commentary around that. So it's quite interesting. If you haven't seen it, it's still very bloody, but it's not completely focused on the gore. It's got more to it than that.
More to it. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm just going to read through some highlights from this article. So the Candyman is an urban legend that tells the scary story of a murdered, it says slave, but I'm just going to replace that with enslaved person who returns from the dead in search of revenge if you say his name 5 times while looking in the mirror. A horror movie was made in, 1992, to be specific, about the legend, followed by 2 sequels, actually, starring Tony Todd as the Candyman. I don't actually even know who that is.
Neither.
We'll get into exactly how to play the Candyman challenge here. So according to legend, if you look into a mirror and chant the name Candyman 5 times, he will appear behind you and kill you with his hook. So he has a hook for a hand on one side, I think his right side. So the Candyman is a vicious killer with a bloody hook for a hand. He appears from the mirror covered in blood and bees and has nothing but murder on his mind.
Weird.
They say that many years ago, the Candyman was a real man. So back in the days when slavery was legal, Candyman was a Black enslaved man named Daniel Robitaille, which they actually reference that name in the movie, in the newest one. I don't remember if it's in the older ones. But he worked on a plantation in New Orleans. He was a very talented painter and was chosen by the plantation owner to paint a portrait of his daughter. You can probably see where this is going.
Yeah.
Daniel fell in love with the daughter of the white plantation owner. And when the obviously racist plantation owner discovered that his daughter and this man, Daniel, were in love, he raised an angry mob and chased Daniel out of town.
Oh.
So she loved him back. So keep that in mind.
Right.
Which, I mean, not that that was even relevant then, but
yeah.
So this mob was armed with pitchforks and had a pack of dogs with them. They chased Daniel across fields of the plantation, streams, like basically like moving farther and farther away from the plantation. Finally, they caught up with him near an old barn. These men seized Daniel and cut off his right hand with a rusty saw. They then covered him in honey and threw him into a beehive. So I'm sure that was severely painful. He died from his injuries. But it said that he cursed the men who killed him and vowed to return and exact his revenge. So the idea is that his spirit will never rest, and now his ghost walks the world for all eternity, appearing when his name is called 5 times. So you can say it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, but never say it 5. So this one's really interesting to me because I think, there's so much like, what's the word? It's so complicated when we talk about, I think, like certain Black icons or characters or legends, like in this case, because you kind of get into that trope of like the magical Black person, where it's like, no, Black people can also just be regular people. Like that doesn't make them different. So I think that's a little bit tricky with this one. But the concept is just so immensely creepy. I mean, similar to Bloody Mary. It's like, I will never say that. I'm not about to look in a mirror and say
never.
that.
Just in case.
That's that. Yeah, just in case. You don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know. Because the other thing too is that my feeling is like, okay, so say he did curse the men and say, I'm going to come back and exact revenge. And he's just a really tormented spirit. Like he'd have every right to come back and try to exact revenge.
Yeah.
And also the way that they like tortured him basically before he died. It's like, I can see how that would generate a very unsettled spirit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's that, but it's also what we've talked about in the past with like the power of suggestion and of intention and all of that. Like, to what degree do you as a person have the ability to conjure something that may or may not, quote unquote, exist without your mental engagement with it? Does that make sense? I'm not trying to sound like so cerebral, but I'm having a hard time like putting it into words.
No, it does make sense.
Okay.
Well, let me know if this is what you were saying, but is it a real spirit returned, or is it something that we can conjure in our minds? Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly. But like conjure in our minds, not just in that you can like scare yourself, but I also mean like conjure it into existence.
Right. Yeah.
With your mind.
Yeah. Kind of like we had a similar conversation around Slender Man.
Yep. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's Candyman. I don't have a ton of information on it. I think so much of like this quote unquote story comes from the movies at this point.
Yeah.
So highly recommend watching the new one. Not you. Don't watch
Yeah.
it. You'll hate it.
I don't know.
But anybody
Skip it.
listening who likes scary movies, it's a really, really well done one. So yeah, it's good. So that's Candyman.
Wow. Interesting.
Yes.
I did see when I was doing research about Bloody Mary that some people think Candyman derived from her.
Interesting. Okay.
Just in the way that they're both conjured from mirrors. I think there are very different origin stories for them, but some
hers is
similarities.
older though, isn't it? I mean, I would assume
yes. Although
Candyman was from the 1800s.
Yes, except this is the thing. It was really interesting learning about this. So I'll get into like her origin story. But okay, basically, Bloody Mary, as we know, she is an apparition that's said to appear in a mirror if you summon her through certain rituals. And there are a lot of stories about how you can summon her. Like it's less cut and dry than Candyman, just saying it 5 times. They really vary. But I wanted to start with just a little bit about who she is and how the legend started. So, the Bloody Mary ritual, her origin story, like I said, is not set in stone. It is believed that it originated in the early 19th century from this sort of divination practice that young people, and of course, especially young girls, would participate in. And it went that if you walked backwards up the stairs in a dark area, holding a candle in one hand and a hand mirror in the other, you would see one of 2 things reflected in the mirror. So, option 1 would be the face of the person you're destined to marry. And option 2 was a skull, which indicated, I know, not great, but
polar opposites also.
I know.
Jeez.
That's, 2, totally opposite options. And if you saw the skull, it meant that you were destined to die before you could ever get married. So the fact, the fact that the 2.
How pissed would you be if you actually summoned the courage to do this and you see some fucking Hamlet ass looking skull? I would be like, you motherfuckers. Why'd I do this? Why did
I do this? I'd rather not know.
No, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think it's funny that the fact that the only 2 options are marriage or dying before you get married are really
how about choosing not to marry?
Yeah, exactly. But I
mean, it's a different time, but
I was just gonna say it's telling of the time period because especially for women, marriage was like the ultimate goal of life. The purpose of your life was to get married and bear children, etc. So, that reminded me, I might have mentioned this in the Halloween episode, but for Halloween this year, I went on a tour of this old, beautiful Victorian house here that's turned into a museum. And it was about Halloween in the Victorian era specifically. And I think it would be so interesting to look more into their divination rituals.
Ooh, yeah.
Because there were so many. A lot having to do with marriage. Yeah, that'd be great. But she was also talking about like seances and using Ouija boards were just like daily, whatever, commonplace.
I mean, it's like, I guess, like reading your horoscope or something like that, right?
Yeah, I think.
Which I guess isn't that different if you think about it.
Yeah, not really. And for them, it was like death was so much closer. Like if your family member died, it probably happened in your home.
Right.
And like people died.
And younger.
Yeah, younger and more easily, I guess.
Yeah. So. And more like kind of brutally, honestly.
Yeah. So that could be interesting. But
yeah. Okay, wait, I have a question for you really quick, just to interject. If you had to choose between knowing when or how you die, which would you pick?
That's kind of an impossible question because if you knew how, then you could avoid whatever situation.
But it's going to happen no matter what.
I think I'd rather know how.
Me too.
I don't want to just think about like, okay, it's my last day.
Yeah, you're like, 10 days left.
Yeah, that would be agony.
That's like the, did you ever read that book, The Immortalists?
Mm-mm. No.
Oh, it was really good. I think you'd like it a lot. Okay. I'll look up the author. But it's the premise, and this isn't giving anything away. This is literally like written on the back of the book. Mm-hmm. These siblings, I think there are like 4 or 5 of them. I think 5. Mm-hmm. They go to see like a psychic, and she tells them, each of them, the day they're going to die, like the date. And she tells them individually, so they don't hear each other's, I don't think. And then it like shows how their lives play out after that. So some believe it, some don't, and it's just like all about their lives. But yeah, it's called The Immortalist. It's really, really good. Yeah, it just reminds me of that because, I mean, as you can imagine, at least one of them is thinking like, oh my God, like here's the countdown.
Right. Oh God. Yeah. Yeah. That sounds really cool.
Okay. Yeah, it's really good.
I'm gonna look it up.
Okay, sorry, proceed.
No, that's okay. Let's see. Oh yeah. So I could only find one indication of a date for when the Bloody Mary in the mirror ritual, like we know today, started. And that was in a blog written by someone named Adam Seltzer, who is a ghost tour guide in Chicago. And his bio said that he's often featured on the History Channel and the Travel Channel.
What a flex.
I know. I don't know what kind of show he would be on, but seems reputable enough. So, yeah. Anyway.
I mean, then again, isn't Ancient Aliens on the
History Channel? That's what I was thinking. I was like, that's probably what he's on.
That guy with the hair that looks like he's been electrocuted is just probably one of my favorite people to walk the planet.
Yeah.
Like, thank you, sir, for your service and entertainment.
Mm-hmm. He was just born to be a meme.
He was destined. Born to be a meme.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh, shit.
Yeah. It's so entertaining.
God.
But, yeah. So maybe, I don't know who Adam Seltzer is, but we'll just take his word for it. Yeah. But through his research, he found that the Bloody Mary ritual kind of appeared out of nowhere in the late 1960s.
Oy.
Which is so much more recent than I would have guessed. Like that's...
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So, I don't know. And it doesn't have a clear origin story, which in a way kind of makes it creepier to me.
Yeah,
like why,
agreed.
When, and how did it spread so fast, and all that. So
don't love that.
Who is Bloody Mary? So first of all, she is not always called Bloody Mary. She has kind of a lot of names. Sometimes she's known as Mary Worth, Mary Worthington, Mary Wales, Mary Wolfe, Mary Jane, Mary White, and the list just goes on and on. And some of these seem to be specific to certain geographic regions, but Bloody Mary is by far the most widespread alias of hers.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but let's talk about some of these other Marys really quick. So, starting with Mary Wales, this information comes from someone named Linda Winter's master's thesis, which, by the way, her thesis topic was sleepover games and folklore, which is just the coolest thing.
That is so fun.
Yeah, I wish I had done that for my thesis.
Oh, what the hell?
So interesting.
Sleepover games and folklore?
Yeah.
Can we like read her whole thesis?
Yeah, I can find the link if you want. It's pretty long.
I'm very curious.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in this thesis, she cites an article by Janet Langlois. I don't know how to say that, but Janet was told by a 12-year-old student of hers that it was becoming a common game to summon the spirit of a young girl named Mary Wales by saying, "Mary Wales, I believe in you," in the mirror in a darkened bathroom. Anywhere from 10 to 100 times, which seems really excessive to say it 100 times. But Mary Wales seems to be more specific to Indiana in the United States, as she is a, I guess, character, quote unquote, in an urban legend there called the Vanishing Hitchhiker. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
I hadn't either, but apparently, as with most things, there are a lot of variations of it, and it exists kind of all over the place. But the basic premise is that there's a man who picks up a hitchhiker, and the hitchhiker gets in the backseat of the car and is just silent for the whole ride. And then when they arrive at the destination, the driver turns around to say, "We're here," and there's no one there in the car. So they just disappear, vanish into thin air. I know. And in some stories, it goes further to say that the driver somehow finds out that the passenger is someone who had died a long time ago.
Of course.
Yeah. So in this case, Mary Wales was one of the hitchhikers. And presumably her death was not a good one if she's coming back as a scary mirror spirit. So that's Mary Wales. And then there were 3 distinct stories about Mary Worths.
Okay.
And the first is from Adam's blog that I mentioned before. And that seems to be specific to Illinois or even just Chicago. And in that case, Mary Worth is said to be a woman who would offer refuge to runaway slaves in Illinois, but then, this is awful, torture and kill them in her barn. So she was just an evil, evil woman.
Wait a minute. I think they used that woman as the foundation for a character in American Horror Story Coven.
Really?
Yeah. I think so, yeah.
Huh.
I think Kathy Bates plays her character.
Huh.
I'll have to double check. I literally couldn't finish that season because there was a lot of like torture kind of scenes, and I was just all racially motivated, and I was like, this is just too much. But wow, okay, that's sorry, continue. That just like dawned on me.
I mean, when you were talking about the Candyman and Daniel, sadly being tortured in a barn, it's like some parallels there.
Yeah, weird.
Yeah. Okay, then there's a Wisconsin version of Mary Worth, and she was said to be a woman who was badly disfigured by some kind of accident and was really spiteful about it. So if she were summoned into the mirror, she would lash out of it and try to disfigure whoever called her there, and have them meet the same fate that she did.
Right.
So, yeah.
It's not very...
No.
She's really not trying to like pay it forward, No. Maybe she is, but in like a really bad way.
Yeah, she's very bitter. Yeah.
Jesus.
Yikes. And the third and final Mary Worth is believed to have been a woman who was tried for witchcraft during the Salem witch trials.
Okay.
And there's no one on the list that I could find, at least of the ones who were executed, named Mary Worth, but who knows what was happening back then. And all of these Mary Worths can be summoned by looking in the mirror and repeating, "I believe in Mary Worth." So, similar but different. And then finally, Bloody Mary, the one we know. This is a nickname for Mary Tudor, who is the daughter of Henry VIII. And yeah, so Mary Tudor, she definitely did have a lot of blood on her hands. There's no denying that. But her story is also just rife with sexism as a female leader, when her father was equally brutal as she was. Excuse me. But anyway, she earned her nickname as Bloody Mary after she ordered 280 Protestants to be burned at the stake as heretics in her bid to restore Roman Catholicism as the official religion of England in the late 1500s. Yeah. So it's, yeah, awful. I mean, that was probably like par for the course then. I mean, just through history that becomes terrible, but
just killing in the name of God, because I'm sure that's what you would want.
Right, exactly. That's what.
Jesus.
But those are the possibilities for who Bloody Mary is. But there are so many ways to summon her, and these all come from an article by Alan Dundas, I think. He studies folklore, and he compiled a whole bunch of interviews where like pretty young girls were asked how to summon Bloody Mary and what they knew about her. So here are some of them. Okay, during recess at school, you go into the girls' bathroom. Your friends wait outside because only one person is allowed in at a time. One girl stands at the door to turn out the lights once you're positioned in front of the mirror. Once the lights are out, you close your eyes and turn around 3 times.
Yeah.
Then you open them and stare straight into the mirror and chant, Bloody Mary, show your fright this starry night. You have to chant slowly so she has time to come from the spirit world. Then you wait to see her face. Once you see her, you have to run out of the bathroom where your friends are waiting. If you've sinned or done anything evil in your life, then you will have 3 scratches of blood on your cheek.
Interesting. That's almost like a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
Like if you're good, she'll just come and be like, what's up?
Right. But if you're bad, she'll scratch you. I know.
Yeah. She'll scratch you.
She'll scratch you. I'm going to get you.
I'm going to get you.
Yeah. Let's see. This one's more like consistent with what I have heard. A group of girls go into a dark room where a mirror is present. Then everyone starts chanting Bloody Mary until a woman's bloody face appears in the mirror. Simple, straightforward. Yeah. And then some of these other ones I didn't know have to do with the toilets flushing. Have you heard of that?
Okay, no, but I feel already vindicated because as a child, I was really afraid of flushing the toilet.
I remember you telling that.
Yes, I was convinced that there was a monster that was going to come out and get me, that somehow flushing the toilet was the thing that it was going to be like, oh, that's it. Coming for you.
Yep. But I mean, yeah, you weren't far off because I guess apparently some spirits can reside in toilets or at least come up through them, which is similar to that fear of like, okay, there's a snake in here.
Yes.
Crawl up
okay, I'm gonna hover over the toilet seat for the rest of my life. That's it. Screw my pelvic floor health. It's fine. I'll hover.
Whatever. I know. It's, yeah.
I was already worried about snakes. Now I have to worry about ghosties coming up my hoo-ha. Stay out of my hoo-ha, spirits. You're not welcome.
Yeah, I hope she wouldn't do that. But just don't talk about Bloody Mary when you're on the toilet. That's
not okay. I will not talk about her, but what if I'm thinking about her? Because that's going to be an intrusive thought for me now every time I have to pee.
I mean, same, but I think you have to say her name. That's consistent in all of these. Like
she's like a auditory learner.
Yes,
Okay. Yes,
exactly.
yes, yes.
She has to
Words of affirmation is her love language. Okay,
exactly.
excellent. Excellent.
And we can avoid that. So
yes.
yeah. But all the rest of these have to do with chanting Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, and flushing the toilet, like while you're doing it. So I guess you wouldn't be sitting on the toilet. You would be standing.
Maybe you would. I don't know.
I don't know. But then if she comes, I guess the indication of her being there is that the toilet water will then run red and bloody.
That doesn't seem sanitary.
No. So
like, what if you're like, oh, it must be Bloody Mary, and instead you have an ulcer? Like, hello, these are important details to take note of.
Yeah.
Your doctor's like, how are things going? You're like, there's a lot of blood in my toilet, but it's just Bloody Mary, I think.
I'm pretty sure I called her, accidentally.
Accidentally?
I didn't mean to.
God.
But
I didn't mean to. It was an accident. Oopsie.
Yeah. Oops. Well, okay. So that's how you summon her. I found one personal story of somebody who did Bloody Mary. And so in her story, Bloody Mary was the name of a witch that lived back in colonial times.
Okay.
And the witch used her black magic to become young again by killing young girls in the village. And so she was burned at the stake, but Bloody Mary used mirrors to help her locate and enchant her victims. So I think as a witch, she was able to look through people's mirrors and find where the young girls were.
Yo, okay. Well, yikes to use it for that reason, but
yeah,
that'd be kind of lit though. If you could look into a mirror and pick what mirror you want to see into.
Yeah.
Not for creepy reasons.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's kind of creepy.
What else
aren't you just kind of I feel like the idea of being a voyeur always has kind of a sexual deviancy kind of vibe. But who isn't compelled to look into someone else's household when it's dark outside and it's bright inside and they're sitting at the dinner table or they're fighting or they're whatever, doing normal household things. But it's that. I would just be so curious to be wonder what my neighbors are doing right now.
No,
take a peek.
Yeah, I know. That's, so true. It's just human nature to want to know. Curiosity.
Yeah, and I feel like it makes us feel kind of connected too. That's oh, we're alike. We do the same shit. You also fold laundry and load the dishwasher and fight with your spouse. Great.
Exactly. Yeah. I always think about that when I'm sitting in traffic, surrounded by people. And I just think they all are living their lives and I'm probably never going to see them again. I know nothing about them, but we're sharing this moment together.
Yes. Yeah. I think something so similar because I live on near the 30th floor of my building and it's overlooking a major highway. And it's actually really beautiful, especially at night, but it's very trafficy at night. And so sometimes I'm just sitting in my bed feeling like a little bird in a perch and I'm just looking down at all these people and I'm what who are they, who's in the car, one, who are they going home to, if anyone? Do they have pets? Do they have hobbies? What do they do for work? Are they going to work? Are they going home from work? Where do they work? What do they do? I'm so curious sometimes. Oh my God, who are you?
It is very interesting to think about. Okay. So this Bloody Mary comes through the mirror. Okay, so these girls in Kimberly's story, they had their candle. They chanted Bloody Mary's name 3 times in the bathroom mirror. And I'm just going to read in her words now. So the 5 of us waited tensely as we gazed without blinking at our faces that reflected in the glass. I strained my eyes trying to see through the mirror and some other realm that I both dreaded and hoped might be there. So then nothing was happening. They decided to just leave. Suddenly, Danielle screamed and pointed at the mirror. I whirled away from the locked door and saw a glowing white figure staring at us from the mirror. Her face was twisted with malice, and flames seemed to flicker around her. In one hand, she held a bloody knife. Could this be Bloody Mary, or were our eyes playing tricks on us? All of a sudden, the figure lunged forward, her knife hand coming straight out of the mirror and striking Danielle in the face. Long scratches appeared on Danielle's cheeks, and she staggered backwards with a gasp of pain, hands coming up to protect her face. So...
Yo, that is terrifying.
Yeah. Okay, final detail. After they left and turned the lights back on, the writer says, I felt a burning sensation on my arm. I looked down, and carved in my arm were the words, I am real.
I just got full body goosebumps.
Same.
No.
Yeah. So she framed that story as being totally true. I don't know if it's true, but...
Well, and I don't even know if it's a question of like, is it true? But did it actually happen that way, or do they believe it happened that way? You know?
Same question, like conjured in their minds.
Yeah. Holy.
Yeah.
So what is the origin story of Bloody Mary that you heard as a kid?
I think I had heard... Do
you remember?
I think I had heard about the Mary Tudor version.
Okay.
But yeah, and then I heard 3 times in the mirror with a candle in a dark bathroom. Mm-hmm. I had never heard toilets or spinning. It was just looking at yourself in the mirror and saying Bloody Mary.
The story I had heard about Bloody Mary is just so completely different from these.
Really?
So the one I had heard was it was a little girl who got very sick, I think with like tuberculosis or something like that, was pronounced dead, buried, and that night there was a huge storm. And back then, because especially like a lot of people died in the home and were buried on their like home property. So they didn't necessarily have like a coroner, you know, or somebody doing like an autopsy. That wasn't really happening. So, and this was, I think, supposed to be like, maybe not Middle Ages, but like colonial times, maybe like 1700s, which is what I was expecting you to talk about. But so it's really interesting. But so I guess back then they would tie a string around the wrist of the person buried, and then that string would lead up, 6 feet or whatever to the surface, and at the surface there'd be a bell. The string would be attached to a bell, so that if they weren't actually dead, there'd be a way to alert people that they were quite literally buried alive. But that night there was a massive storm and knocked the bell over, and so she tried to scratch her way through the coffin, creating very bloody hands, which is, she died in obviously a very traumatic way. And so the idea that I grew up with was that you say Bloody Mary 3 times as you're spinning around 3 times, and then stop and look in the mirror, and that she appears in the mirror with bloody hands, like reaching out to you. So that's really interesting because, like, it's just, it sounds very urban legendy. I don't even know if that's true that people were buried with bells like that.
It
like,
is
I don't
true.
Even know, but really?
Yeah. There's I found out about that on My Favorite Murder, the podcast. They did an episode about that. And yeah, people had to use those bells kind of frequently. Because
that's literally what I was just going to say is, like, if that's the case, like, just wait a little to bury him, you know? Give him a minute.
Yeah.
Give him a minute or a day or maybe like a week.
Yeah.
Jeez.
But yeah, it's creepy. The last thing I wanted to say about this, actually last couple things. So one, of course, people always try to rationalize things and figure out why they started. And I just thought this was interesting that the fact that the ritual takes place in a bathroom, it
Mm-hmm.
involves blood, and it's practiced mostly by young girls, it kind of leads people to
Mm-hmm.
believe that it started as having something to do with menstruation.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, I hadn't either until today, but it makes some sense. Like,
It does, yeah.
yeah, it's because there's fear around leaving childhood once you start menstruating, going into
Yeah.
womanhood and all the
Loss of
expectations.
innocence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, this Dundas person that I mentioned before, he even mentions anxiety around like spotting on your clothes or
Mm-hmm.
bleeding through your clothes. Um, and that is embarrassing and especially like shameful if a man sees it because
Right.
men are grossed out by period blood. And
Right.
so like all of the shame and not stigma,
Yeah.
but
Well, stigma though. I mean, I think there's stigma just to womanhood.
yeah, yeah, and it all
We're
comes
told not to talk
from
about it. Yeah.
exactly. It all comes from male attitudes toward menstruation. So
Yeah.
I just thought that
Interesting.
was interesting. And then, very last thing, I mentioned this briefly last week about looking in the mirror in a dimly lit room for too long
Hmm.
can
Yes.
distort your features.
Hmm.
So, this came from an article, but I couldn't get a full version of it. So, this
Hmm.
is the Wikipedia summary.
Okay.
But it comes from somebody named Giovanni Caputo, and he
Hmm.
calls the phenomenon the strange face illusion, where facial features may appear to melt, distort, disappear, and rotate, while other hallucinatory elements such as animal or strange faces may appear. It's believed to be a consequence of a dissociative identity effect, which causes the brain's facial recognition system to misfire in a currently unidentified way. So it's
Whoa.
shrouded in mystery, but
Yeah, that's more that psychological phenomenon is more complex than I realized.
mhm, yeah,
When you were saying when you were describing it, like how she appears, that popped into my head, that
mhm,
reference from last week.
yeah,
But yeah, that's interesting.
mhm, yeah. So
What do you think?
like an optical illusion. Well, this one, like when you said that you spin around, that
Hmm.
makes me think like you're spinning around, it's dark, and you have this idea in your
Kind of
head.
disoriented.
Yeah, so maybe it is just in something you imagine.
Hmm.
But I don't know. You know, I'm a
But then what about
believer
that
in
girl's
things.
story?
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like girl's story. See, to me, that's the thing is like, maybe this is just my own thing, but like, I, I'm Catholic. I mean,
Mhm.
I was going to say technically, I'm Catholic,
Technically.
and yeah, I don't like really associate myself with the institution so much, but I do believe in some things,
Hmm.
and that are part of the Catholic tradition.
Uh-huh.
Okay, Freudian slip.
Mhm.
Tradition, and one of those things is angels and demons. Like I think
Mhm.
that I do believe that those kinds of entities exist. I don't think they look the way that we imagine they do, or manifest in the ways that we've seen in pop culture, but I do believe that they exist based on just things that I've heard from people, like stories.
Mhm.
And here's my thing is I feel like my mom's always said this, like even when I remember in university when we'd had those like witchy books,
Mhm.
like there were always parts of those like spell books that had, hexes and like
Yeah.
dark magic, and they had warnings on them. Like,
Mhm.
careful what you're doing. Like,
Mhm.
there's your intention is powerful and all of that. And I remember one time I brought one home and my mom said this to me on multiple occasions, like, just don't open them in the house. Like, just don't do them here. If you want to read through it, do that, but do it in your own space. Cause
Mhm.
like, you just don't know. You just don't
Yeah.
know. And I think for me, my feeling is I wouldn't dare make up a story like that,
Mm-hmm.
because what if you offend something?
Yeah.
And I mean something.
Right.
Like, you just don't know. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I guess I tend to be, with some exceptions, relatively trusting of people, especially when they swear adamantly that they're
Mm-hmm.
telling their truth,
Yeah.
their version of the truth.
Right.
So I don't know, like something like that, where like her face was actually scratched or
Mm-hmm.
cut, and
Yeah.
then the I am real thing.
Yeah.
Because I mean, again, maybe it's not Mary Tudor or
Mm-hmm.
this little girl that died of tuberculosis. Maybe it's a demon that's
Mm-hmm.
coming to you because you're literally seeking out something scary.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. I just
Yeah,
don't like it.
I know. I agree. I don't want to mess with anything just in case it's true.
Yeah.
And like you said, telling a story like that could even also make it true.
It's powerful. Like, words are powerful, intention is powerful.
Yeah.
All of that.
Like, I had this is one of the most, I don't know the right word, but it's something that I had thought about consistently, and it came true. Where it was in elementary school, and for some reason I just had this flash of a thought that we were gonna have to do like a music recital in front of our whole class and parents, and I was like, I need to prepare myself for that. And then she announced like 2 weeks later that we were gonna do that.
Weird.
So I kept thinking about it, like, I was like, what am I gonna play for that? You know? And then
oh my God,
there it was. So
that's so odd.
Yeah. I mean, and
I'm not surprised that would happen to you.
I guess I'm not either, but yeah, like, she hadn't mentioned it at all, that was even a possibility. It just came into my mind.
Came to you.
And then there it was. So
right.
Yeah.
So then at that point, my question is, was that an incoming wave or an outgoing wave? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, did you just kind of read it off of her somehow?
Mm-hmm. Or did I put it out there?
Did you project it into existence?
I would say the latter, but that makes me seem like I have powers or something. But
well, no, I mean, I think both of those are powerful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. So
that's really, really interesting.
Don't make up stories. They might
Don't make up stories.
True.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Don't fuck with Candyman or Bloody Mary.
No.
Or if you are gonna do the challenge, film it and send it to us.
Yeah. Exactly.
We can make you Insta famous. Not really, but yeah, make it worthwhile. Do it for the gram.
Viral. It would go viral.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Just no Photoshop. Okay, guys?
Yeah.
Come on, guys.
Come on.
Integrity.
Yeah.
Integrity. Okay, I think I'm going to save my story for next week.
Okay.
We have, yes, I got to leave you guys on a little bit of a cliffhanger. It's a really good one. It's a story from my parents, actually, and lots of little details. And it's interesting because my parents divorced years ago, and I'd heard the story, I think, from my dad at some point in the past, but from my mom multiple times. And as we started doing this podcast, they both kind of mentioned, like, oh, you should talk about this story from it's a haunted house story, basically. But I was like, you know what? I should just ask my dad for like his in-depth recollection of the situation. Their stories match like to a T.
Perfect.
There's like one detail that I'll go into next week that's like slightly off, but both of them are like, I could be wrong. They could be right.
Yeah.
So it's like a kind of irrelevant timing thing, but that's it. Like it's all the same, which blows my mind, because it's not like they're like sitting around chatting about it. They don't chat much. So it's what? Yeah. It's very weird. And I will say too, neither of them are like, they're both spiritual people, I would say, but neither of them they're very no nonsense kind of people. Like, they're not the kind of people, like, I could see them both the reason why I was actually so surprised that their stories matched so perfectly is because I could see either of them downplaying it like a lot, being like, no, your mom is being, your dad is being dramatic. It wasn't that crazy. It wasn't that weird. But no, it was like they were both like, it was really, really creepy. And like we were very happy to be out of that house. So
okay. Oh, I can't
I'll
wait.
leave you guys with that for next week.
I'm excited to hear.
And it'll be around Crema.
Yeah. I was just
so for anybody celebrating Crema, which is Christmas in my weird little way, Merry Crema and happy holidays, Merry Crema.
Or Christmas.
Merry Christmas, guys. Merry Christmas. If you celebrate Christmas, if not,
enjoy the
happy holidays. Enjoy the season. Hope you're not somewhere freezing your little booties off, your spooky little booties. And happy New Year. I mean, we'll talk to you guys before then. But wow. I can't believe we're almost to 2022.
Oh God, I know. What even happened?
Can you believe?
No,
I have no idea what the heck happened.
Yeah, that was, it zoomed right by.
Zoom. Make my heart go boom, boom, my supernova girl. And with that, stay spooky, my friend.
Stay spooky, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Rate and review us. Subscribe. Smash that subscribe button. Just body slam that like. I'm so sorry. Follow us on social at Girls Gone Spooky on FB and IG.
Oh.
Like that lingo? A little lingo? Some meta lingo, am I right? Because it's meta now, everyone. And also, if you have haunted house stories or you have scary Bloody Mary / Candyman conjuring stories, we want to hear it. Any other stories, UFOs, alien abduction.
I hadn't thought of that one.
Literally all of the above.
Yeah.
We want to hear it. Anything spooky.
Oh, jinx.
Jinx. You owe me a soda.
All right. I'll send it to you in a package.
Send me one. Perfect. Shake it up first, okay?
You know I would.
Oh, you little demon. My favorite little demon. All right. Thanks for listening, guys. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.